I'm very, very excited. This is, obviously a franchise that is storied and has had tremendous success, in its history, and the fan base, the love from the fans, the energy has been unbelievable. Just in this past 24 hours of it really being very real, and being on the ground here. And as far as the team goes, the locker room, the guys in the locker room that are already on the team were fantastic. We got a chance to sit and watch practice today. Didn't get to watch the game because we were flying last night, but such an awesome win. And we look to mix in with that and move forward. A little colder. It's such a different look. But still very, very talented teams. I mean, obviously what Boston and Cleveland and Toronto and Washington, all these teams are doing is impressive. But I look at it as a big opportunity for us to really make a push these next 2.5 months or whatever it is, and really solidify ourselves in the Eastern Conference.
You'll obviously be wearing a star here. You know that. People will come to see you play. But the expectations will be there with it, as they're expecting you to help turn this franchise around, and probably in short order. Are you okay with that?
Absolutely. It's not something that I ever shy away from. I love challenges, but at the same time, it's not something that I think about, in terms of letting it affect me. I appreciate the support, and I appreciate all the fans that this fan base has. But at the same time, it's not about me, it's about our team, and it's about all these guys moving towards the same goal. And when we get everybody on the same page, we're going to be tough to stop.
Watershed moments to change the trajectory of a mediocre franchise come around every so often. So when a minuscule opportunity to make an impactful difference presents itself, you must take advantage of it at all costs. That was the logic and the reasoning behind the Detroit Pistons' decision to trade for 5-time All-Star Blake Griffin last week. What does the addition of one of the NBA's top 20 players mean for the perception of the franchise, both on and off the court? For some answers, I turn to Matt Shepard, who covers the Pistons for Fox Sports Detroit and WDFN 1130 The Fan. He joined me on Tuesday to provide some insights. So, Matt, first of all, we want to take the time and welcome you to the Two Man Advantage podcast, and we're excited to talk some Pistons basketball with you this afternoon.
Yeah, Pistons have been playing well, Kev, so I'm glad to talk a little bit about them too now that they're back to 500.
Well, they're relevant now, so we can talk about them. But when you first heard about the trade, I'm just wondering your initial reaction and whether you think this is a good long-term investment for this franchise.
Well, it better be, because this is kind of chips to the middle of the table. When you're going to spend this kind of money on a guy, along with the amount of money you committed to Andre Drummond, it better be a long-term solution to what has been recently their long-term woes. My initial reaction was, wow, you gave up an awful lot. You gave up a young, promising wing player in Tobias Harris, who's still 1 year under contract, under $12 million. It's very manageable. You gave up a team leader in a guy like Avery Bradley. You gave up 2 draft picks. And you were getting a guy who, quite honestly, from afar, is more of an offensive guy than anything else. And let's face it, he's played a full slate of games once in his career. 2 other times in his NBA career, he played 80 of the 82. So I'm not going to cut him down for that. So let's say it's 3 times in his career. Well, that's not a whole lot. In other words, a lot of people feel like he's been injury prone. I don't like to call it injury prone, but he has had his fair share of injuries, and you can't help but wonder if that's a little hereditary, if that is going to be too consistent for you to swallow. At what point are you going to be constantly holding your breath? But look, in order for you to get better in a market like Detroit that is not going to appeal to the high-priced free agents all the time, you must take risks. And now that you look back at it, you think, well, you're not going to re-sign Avery Bradley anyway. Tobias Harris, you've already tried this situation, and it hasn't worked out as well as you would have liked. and a first and second round pick are both protected through 2021. What you've done with your draft picks recently, and they're protected 1 through 4, what you've done recently with your draft picks have not worked out as well as you would have liked. So get the proven commodity, get the guy who's an absolute star, a beast who makes everybody else better, and you hope for the best. And so far, it's been pretty strong in the results.
Well, they haven't lost, so absolutely. So what do you see as the immediate ramifications on the court for this team with Griffin in the lineup?
Well, I asked Reggie Bullock about that, and Reggie Bullock played with him for a short period of time in L.A. with the Clippers before Reggie Bullock was waived, and eventually the Pistons got him, and he loves the opportunity that Blake Griffin draws double teams and then can kick it out. In talking with Stan Van Gundy and other members of his coaching staff, things that Blake Griffin does better than we realize. And I don't think, Kev, we truly appreciate players unless they play for our team, the team that you follow on a regular basis, okay? So I've watched the Pistons every single game for how many years, and I see their flaws, but I also notice the guys who play every single night for them, who does a pretty good job of it. You watch Blake Griffin from afar, immediately I assume he's an offensive-minded guy. Well, guess what? Now you come to realize he's a much better rebounder than you realize, but he's also a much more gifted passer and probably a better defensive player than you originally acknowledged. Now, you've only seen him for 3 games, so you don't want to draw too many conclusions too quickly, but he is better in a number of things than you originally thought. So he's going to spread the floor, there's no doubt. He's going to help. He's already helped Andre Drummond a great deal inside. He's brought an enthusiastic energy, not just to the fan base, but to that locker room. And as I mentioned, he's a very gifted passer, and I think that's going to help an awful lot of guys, not just a guy like Andre Drummond. Stan Van Gundy gave me a great example the other day. He said, we're running on a break, right? And he says, usually with somebody pushing it, and in this case it happened to be Stanley Johnson down the middle of the floor, Blake Griffin was already that first guy back. And that means he's matched up with a guard, so the guard is the first line of defense for the opposition in transition. With Tobias Harris, he would drift to the corner and ready for a spot-up jump shot, a 3 or maybe just inside the arc. Well, Blake Griffin for Detroit now is getting low post position against a guard. It's a mismatch. This team has got to learn how to play with a guy who can do that so effectively and so quickly and so energetically. Stanley Johnson didn't even look to the middle of the floor because they've never really had anybody like that. He immediately went to the right side for a wing shot when really he should have gone inside for a post shot, and Detroit would have been much more successful in that transition break.
Now, what do you think this move means for the job security of head coach Stan Van Gundy, and how do you think this changes the perception of the Pistons as a franchise and Gores as an owner, if at all?
Well, if you and I both agree that you need 3 stars on a team, and that seems to be the way teams go. That's the reason Minnesota has put together Wiggins and Butler and Karl Anthony Towns. It's the reason Houston has put together their big 3. All these teams are trying to do that. Then you have 2/3 of it. Now, how you feel about Reggie Jackson, I'm not sure. I think he's a complementary piece, but he is not the Chris Paul of the Clippers, now of the Rockets, to what Detroit needs at that position. It might allow you to get a third, that third wheel, but you have 2/3 of it for sure, and you have a pretty good player in Reggie Jackson at the other spot, even though I wouldn't call him a top 10 point guard. What does it mean for the security of Stan Van Gundy? I don't know if there is such a thing, quite honestly, in sports. Security, we do know this. Tom Gores is fully behind it, the owner. Tom Gores is fully behind the extension that was given to Andre Drummond and to Reggie Jackson, and that Stan Van Gundy, when I asked him who made this decision, was it Stan Van Gundy, the president, or Stan Van Gundy, the head coach, he claims that it was the team president, Stan Van Gundy, who made the trade for Blake Griffin.
And my final 2 questions for you have to do with what do you think the overall perception is around the league about this trade, and do you think it elevates the Pistons in league circles at all, and what do you think the ceiling is with this group?
Well, let's figure this out. How many teams have a legitimate shot at winning the NBA title?
Not very many.
Golden State, Houston. Maybe if you want to throw in a team like the Spurs. Then in the East, isn't it pretty open? I mean, the Boston Celtics offense is still kind of questionable. Cleveland is in a disarray right now. Toronto, you're still not sure because they've never really done it. I like Washington, but how much longer can they get along with John Wall? I guess my point, Kev, is things are wide open right now. What is the perception of the Pistons? Well, I think there's a lot of guys who would like to play with Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond, especially wing players or backcourt players. Backcourt players because it gives them more freedom on the perimeter because those guys are going to demand double teams. It's going to increase somebody's assist. And wing players because you get a chance to shoot the basketball. And oftentimes with a cleaner look than you would on a team that doesn't have those two guys. So I'm not saying that Detroit suddenly becomes a free agent destination, but it's in a lot better shape now than it was before the trade.
Hey, Matt, we want to take a few minutes and thank you for appearing on the Superman Advantage podcast. And I know you're traveling today, so I really appreciate the time, buddy.
All right, Kev. Have a great one. Thanks.